When my mother passed away last spring, I thought the hardest part would be the grief. I was wrong. The hardest part came 3 days after the funeral, when my older sister sat across from me at our family attorney's desk, crossed her legs like she owned the room, and smiled the way she always smiled when she already knew she'd won. Mom had left me a storage facility in rural Pennsylvania, not a house, not land in a nice neighborhood. A storage facility, 48 metal units sitting on 2.5 acres of scrubby red clay out near Dunmore, about 20 minutes from anything resembling a city. The sign out front had been sun-bleached to near white. 2 of the units had broken latches. The office was a converted trailer with a window AC unit that rattled like it was dying. My sister got Mom's condo in Hoboken, 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Market value, just under $780,000. I looked at the document in front of me, Haverfield Self-Storage, established 1987. Well, my sister said, not even trying to hide it, I guess that suits you, doesn't it? You always did love junk. I didn't say anything. I signed where the attorney pointed and folded my copy of the deed into my purse. She laughed on the way out, not a mean little laugh, a full one, like I'd told a joke she'd been waiting years to hear. I sat in my car for a long time before I turned the key. I should back up, because if I just tell you about the storage facility and the condo and the lawyer's office, you won't understand what actually happened. You won't understand what my sister and I were to each other, or what my mother was to both of us, or why any of this hurt the way it did. My name is Nadia. I'm 31 years old. For the last 5 years, I've been working as an occupational therapist at a rehabilitation center in Scranton, which is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with a cracked passenger side mirror. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from the hospital. I don't have a lot, but I've never been someone who needed a lot. My sister's name is Rochelle. She's 38. She works in pharmaceutical sales, which means she makes about 3 times what I make, wears blazers that probably cost more than my car payment, and has opinions about wine that she shares whether you ask or not. She married a man named Holt who works in finance, and they live in a townhouse in Montclair, New Jersey, and have 2 kids in private school and a Peloton in their bedroom, and a vacation house in the Outer Banks. I'm not saying any of this to be petty. I'm saying it so you understand that Rochelle did not need that condo. She wanted it because it was valuable. That's the only reason she wanted anything. Mom and I were close. That's the simplest way to say it. After my father left when I was 9, it was mostly just the 2 of us while Rochelle was at college and then building her life somewhere else. Mom and I watched bad reality TV together on Sunday nights. I drove her to her cardiology appointments when her heart started giving her trouble 3 years ago. I was the one who called 911 the morning she collapsed in her kitchen, and I was the one in the waiting room when the doctor came out to tell us it was too late. Rochelle flew in from Newark in time for the funeral. She cried beautifully the way she did everything. Now, the storage facility. I'll be honest, my first reaction wasn't grief or anger. It was just a flat, tired bewilderment. What was I supposed to do with a storage facility? I'd never managed a business in my life. I didn't know anything about rental agreements or late fees or what you do when someone abandons a unit full of old furniture and stops paying. I called the property manager, a man named Bernard who'd been running the place for Mom since her 2nd hip surgery, and he walked me through the basics in a patient, measured voice that made me think he'd explained things to clueless new owners before. Occupancy rate 31 out of 48 units, monthly gross revenue just under $4,000, monthly expenses including his salary, insurance, and maintenance about $2,400, net after taxes somewhere around $1,200 a month. Not nothing, but not a condo in Hoboken either. I drove out to see it on a Tuesday in April, 2 weeks after the funeral, after my sister had stopped calling to check in and gone back to her life. The clay and gravel driveway crunched under my tires. Bernard met me at the office trailer, handed me a ring of keys, and gave me a tour with the low-key dignity of someone showing a relative around their modest but functional home. I walked the rows of units. Most were locked, which meant they were occupied, which meant someone was paying rent, which meant Mom had been quietly running a small business I hadn't known much about. She'd bought it in 2009, Bernard told me. at a county tax auction for $62,000. Because she'd heard tax auctions were where the deals were, and she'd had some savings sitting in a low-yield account, and she'd wanted to do something with it. She'd hired Bernard, replaced 3 of the worst roofs, raised rates modestly twice in 15 years, and mostly left it alone. I stood at the far end of the property where the units gave way to a stretch of open land I hadn't expected, maybe an acre and a half of it, overgrown with old field grass and edged by a tree line. I didn't know what that land was worth. I didn't know it mattered yet. I drove home. I told myself I'd figure it out. 3 weeks later, Rochelle called. She was friendly at first, the way she got when she wanted something. Asked how I was doing, how work was going. Mentioned that Holt thought the Scranton real estate market was interesting right now, which I understood to mean nothing. Then she pivoted. "I've been thinking about Mom's estate," she said. "Okay," I said. "I just feel like the distribution wasn't entirely fair. I mean, I'm not blaming you, obviously, but the condo, when you really look at the numbers, the market value is one thing. But there are carrying costs, HOA fees, property taxes. It's actually not as simple as it looks." I waited. "I think it might make more sense," she continued, "for us to do a swap. You take the condo, I take the storage property. You've always liked Pennsylvania anyway, and honestly, the storage business is probably more your speed. Something small, manageable. You wouldn't have to deal with the complexity of the Hoboken market. More my speed." That phrase sat in my chest like a stone. "I'll think about it," I said, because I wasn't ready to say no out loud yet. "Don't take too long," she said pleasantly. "Holt's already talked to a few people about development potential." I got off the phone and sat on my kitchen floor for a while, not crying exactly, just thinking. Development potential. I called Bernard the next morning and asked him a question I probably should have asked sooner. What exactly was that back acre and a half? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your mother had it looked at a few years back. There was some interest from a few commercial developers. Something about the highway access and the zoning." "What kind of interest?" "She never moved on it. But I remember the number they mentioned was substantial." I asked him to find whatever paperwork he had from those conversations and email it to me. That weekend, I drove back out to Dunmore and walked the back lot myself. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to read topographic surveys or commercial zoning maps. But I downloaded the county assessor's public records on my phone and stood in the field squinting at the screen, and what I found was this. The back portion of the property was zoned C2, commercial general, adjacent to a state route with a traffic count in the tens of thousands per day. And there was a note in the public record about a pending infrastructure expansion that would add an interchange less than half a mile from where I was standing. I didn't fully understand what I was looking at, but I understood enough to know I needed to make a phone call. I have a friend from college, Petra, who became a commercial real estate attorney in Philadelphia. We don't talk often, but when we do, it's always easy, like time didn't pass. I texted her that night, "Weird question, but can I call you about some property I inherited?" She called me back in 20 minutes. I described the parcel, the zoning, the interchange, the highway access. She was quiet for a long moment. "Nadia," she said slowly, "do you have a survey?" I didn't yet. She told me to get one. She also told me to stop talking to my sister about any of this. The survey took 3 weeks and cost me $900, which I put on my credit card and told myself I'd figure out. When the results came back, Petra walked me through them on a video call. The back parcel was 1.6 acres, commercially zoned, flat, accessible, with utility hookups already stubbed in from when Mom had apparently considered expanding the storage units years ago. Petra had done some informal comps. Her estimate for the development value, depending on what a buyer wanted to put there, a fast food pad site, a small retail strip, a fuel station, was somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. Just for the back acre and a half, not counting the storage business itself, not counting the existing 2.5-acre footprint, the 48 units, the income stream. I sat with that number for a long time. Then I called Petra back and asked her what I needed to do to protect this. The first thing she told me, put the property in a trust. She referred me to an estate planning attorney in Scranton named Mr. Delaney. He specialized in exactly this kind of thing. Small business assets, inherited property, protective structures. We met twice in person and once over the phone, and by the end of May, the property was held in an irrevocable trust with me as the sole beneficiary and trustee. It couldn't be casually challenged, easily transferred, or picked apart by anyone filing a nuisance lawsuit. Mr. Delaney also sent a formal notice to Rochelle's attorney of record. She'd apparently already hired one, which told me everything, that the property was now in trust and not available for any proposed swap, exchange, or negotiation. He was polite about it. He was also very clear. Rochelle called me 4 hours after that letter arrived. She was not friendly this time. "What is this?" she said. "What did you do?" "I got legal advice," I said, "like you apparently already had." "You have no idea what you're throwing away. You're making a mistake. That property is a liability, Nadia. You can't run a storage business. You don't know anything about this. You're going to lose money and then you'll be stuck with worthless land in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and you'll have nothing." I let her talk. When she stopped, I said, "I'm not interested in swapping." "This is so typical of you," she said. "You're doing this just to spite me." "I'm doing this because it's mine." She hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. About 3 weeks later, Bernard called me from the property. He sounded shaken, which he never was. Bernard was the kind of man who handled flooded units and delinquent tenants with the same level of calm. "There's a man here," he said. "Says he's from a development company. He's walking the back lot with a clipboard. I didn't call anyone." I asked Bernard to tell the man to leave and to document his presence with photos and the name on his vehicle if he could get it. Bernard did. The name on the truck was a company called Westmark Capital Group, LLC. I told Petra. She looked them up. Westmark Capital Group, LLC had been registered in New Jersey 11 months ago. Its registered agent was a law firm whose name I didn't recognize, but Petra recognized it. It was the same firm that represented Holt's primary investment company. Holt, my sister's husband. I sat with that for a long time, too. Petra drafted a no trespassing notice and sent it to the Westmark address of record. She also, on my authorization, sent a letter to Holt's law firm noting that we were aware of the connection between Westmark and the principals of that firm, and that any further attempts to access, survey, or assess the property without permission would be treated as trespassing and potentially as tortious interference with the property rights of the trust. The letters were polite, they were also unmistakable. The trespassing stopped. But then something else started. I got a call from my aunt, my mother's sister, who lives in Connecticut and who I've always loved but don't see often enough. She sounded worried. "Nadia, honey, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Rochelle called me. She's saying your mother changed her will right before she died and that the original version left the property to both of you jointly and that you somehow got a different version filed. She's asking if I remember anything about your mother talking about changing her will." I took a slow breath. "Did Mom ever tell you that?" "No," my aunt said. "No, she never said anything like that." "Because she didn't change it," I said. "That's the will. I've seen the original. The attorney has the original. It's notarized. There's no other version." My aunt was quiet. "I didn't think it sounded right," she said. "I just thought you should know what she's saying." I called Petra immediately. Then I called Mr. Delaney. He pulled the original will filing from the county register, time-stamped, notarized, filed 7 months before my mother's death, no subsequent changes, and had a certified copy prepared. Petra sent a formal letter to Rochelle's attorney, stating that the will was unambiguous and that any suggestion the document had been altered, or that a prior version existed would be taken as defamatory, and that we were beginning to document these communications. Rochelle's attorney sent a bland, retreating reply that said essentially, "Never mind." But I understand what she was doing. She was testing the family, seeing if she could get someone to back her narrative. She tried it with 2 of Mom's old friends too, according to my aunt, with the same result. Nobody remembered Mom saying she wanted to leave the storage property to both daughters, because she hadn't said that. By this point, I was tired in a way I hadn't been since the weeks right after Mom died. The grief had settled into something manageable, and then all of this had climbed on top of it. I was working full-time, managing a property 2 hours round trip away, learning things about commercial real estate and trust law that I hadn't expected to need to know, and simultaneously defending what was rightfully mine against my own sister. I remember one night sitting in my apartment eating cereal for dinner because I was too tired to cook, and laughing a little at how unromantic all of it was. Nobody tells you that when something good happens to you. Sometimes you have to spend months just proving you're allowed to have it. In September, 6 months after the funeral, Petra called me with news. A regional commercial development firm had reached out to her. She'd been quietly, professionally circulating information about the back parcel, and they were interested. Not in buying the land outright necessarily, but in a ground lease arrangement. They would lease the commercial parcel from the trust for a term of 40 years, pay a substantial upfront premium and then annual rent. The numbers she gave me made me sit down. Upfront, $220,000. Annual rent after that, $38,000 per year. The storage business would continue operating as normal. I wasn't selling anything. I still owned the land, the building, the business. I was just monetizing the part that had been growing weeds. I said yes. The closing took 2 months. I used part of the upfront payment to pay off my student loans in full, a number that had followed me around for 9 years. I put the rest in a high-yield savings account and did not tell anyone what I had. Bernard got a raise. He'd been underpaid for years and had never complained about it, and that bothered me. He thanked me in the matter-of-fact way he did everything, and I thought my mother had known exactly what she was doing when she hired him. I don't talk to Rochelle anymore. That's not a dramatic statement. It just is what it is. I texted her when the ground lease closed, not to brag, just to say, "The property is doing well, I hope you're okay. I'm not angry at you." She didn't reply. That was fine. I'd said what I wanted to say. My aunt came to visit me in October. She drove up from Connecticut on a Saturday and I took her out to the property and we walked the lot together. The ground lease tenant had already begun site prep. You could see where they'd staked the corners. By spring, there would be a small fuel station and convenience store there, which is maybe not poetic, but it would generate income every month for 40 years, and that land would still be mine, or my children someday, or whoever's. My aunt stood at the tree line and looked at the staked corners, and then looked at me. "Your mother knew," she said. "I think so," I said. "She always said you were the one who could figure things out. She said Rochelle could follow a path, but you were the one who could find one." I didn't say anything. The field grass was brown gold in the October light and the air smelled like Pennsylvania in fall, which is a very specific smell. Dry leaves and cold soil and something faintly mineral underneath. I thought about my mother buying this scrubby parcel at a county tax auction in 2009 with her savings and her instinct and her trust in something she couldn't entirely see. I thought about her driving out here, maybe standing in the same field, maybe looking at the same tree line. I thought about Rochelle saying it suits you perfectly and then laughing. She was right, actually, just not in the way she meant. I keep coming back to that moment in the field. October light, brown grass, the smell of cold Pennsylvania soil, and my aunt standing next to me saying, "Your mother knew." I didn't know how to respond then. I still don't, fully. But I've thought about it a lot since. What my mother actually knew, and what she was trying to hand me when she signed that deed. I think she knew that Rochelle would be fine. Rochelle has always been fine. She moves through the world with the confidence of someone who has never had to wonder whether she belongs in the room. She gets the condo. She gets the view. She gets the thing that looks impressive at a dinner party, and she is genuinely good at acquiring those things. I've never disputed that. What my mother understood, and what took me months of cereal for dinner nights and credit card debt and county assessor records on my phone to understand too, is that looking impressive and actually being solid are two completely different things. The condo is worth what the Hoboken market says it's worth on any given Tuesday. The land is worth what someone is willing to build on it for the next 40 years. One of those things changes with interest rates. The other one just sits there, patient, waiting for someone smart enough to ask the right questions. I wasn't smart about any of this at first. I want to be honest about that. My first instinct when I saw storage facility on that document was embarrassment. My second instinct was to figure out how to make the best of something bad. It took Rochelle calling it a swap opportunity and using the phrase "more your speed" before something in me went still and quiet and said, "Wait, look closer." That stillness was the beginning of everything that came after. I've thought about what it actually takes to hold on to something that's yours when someone more powerful wants to take it. It's not anger, though anger helps get you moving. It's not luck, though the survey timing was fortunate. What it actually takes is the willingness to do the unglamorous work. To call the attorney, to read the zoning maps, to spend $900 on a survey you're not sure you can afford, to sit across from someone patient and methodical like Miss Starvey. Delaney and ask questions that make you feel like you don't know anything. Rochelle assumed I wouldn't do that work. She assumed that my speed was low, that my ceiling was low, that I would be overwhelmed and grateful for whatever she offered. And the honest truth is that assumption almost worked. There were a few weeks there where I was so tired and so sad and so out of my depth that selling or swapping felt like relief. What stopped me wasn't stubbornness. It was something quieter, a sense that my mother had made a decision deliberately, and that decision deserved to be taken seriously. Honoring that felt like the only decent thing I could do for her, so I did it. Even when I didn't know what I was doing, even when it cost me money I didn't have and sleep I needed. The ground lease closes. Bernard gets a raise. My student loans are gone, and I'm standing in a field in October thinking about a woman who bought scrubby land at a county tax auction in 2009 because she believed in something she couldn't entirely see. I think that's what she was trying to teach me. Not that I was special or that I deserved a windfall, just that if you look carefully, do the honest work, and refuse to be rushed into giving away what's yours, sometimes the thing everyone laughed at turns out to be exactly enough.